Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the battleship Retribution, watching the stars through the main view screen when the emergency alert sounded. The red lights bathed everything in blood color, while the ship's communication officer, Lieutenant Danny Walsh, rushed toward him with a data pad in his hands. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking as he handed the device to Morrison. The report was worse than anything Morrison had seen in his 30 years of military service. 3 human colonies had been attacked simultaneously by the Zephyrian Confederation. New Denver was gone completely, with all 2 million inhabitants dead. Port Liberty had been burned from orbit, leaving only ash and radioactive craters. Haven's Rest had suffered biological warfare that turned the entire planet into a toxic wasteland, where nothing could live. Captain Lisa Bradley hurried onto the bridge, carrying more reports from the intelligence division. She was Morrison's most trusted officer and had served with him through 5 different conflicts, but he had never seen her look so angry. The Zephyrians had not just attacked the colonies, but had broadcast a message across all human space declaring that humanity had expanded too far into the galaxy. The alien message was simple and brutal. Earth must withdraw from all star systems beyond the soul boundary or face complete extinction. The Zephyrians claimed they were the rightful rulers of this section of the galaxy, and that humans were nothing more than primitive animals who needed to learn their place. They gave Earth exactly 1 standard year to comply with their demands. Admiral Carl Peterson called an emergency meeting of the Terran High Command within hours of receiving the reports. Morrison traveled to Earth's orbital command station where he found the solar system's most powerful military leaders gathered around a massive holographic display showing the destroyed colonies. General Amy Walsh from the Marine Corps was there along with intelligence Director Paul Garcia and Fleet Admiral Kate Johnson. The holographic images showed the complete devastation that the Zephyrians had caused. New Denver's capital city had been a thriving metropolis of 8 million people just days ago, but now it was nothing but a smoking crater 20 miles wide. The orbital defense platforms had been destroyed so quickly that they never managed to send a distress signal. Port Liberty had fared even worse, with the entire continent turned into glass by repeated plasma bombardments from Zephyrian warships. Director Garcia presented his intelligence analysis of the attacks. The Zephyrians had used overwhelming force, with a fleet of over 300 warships attacking each colony simultaneously. They had employed fusion bombs, plasma weapons, and biological toxins that were banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. The attacks were not random raids, but carefully planned extermination campaigns designed to send a message to humanity. Admiral Peterson studied the tactical data while the other commanders waited for his decision. The Zephyrian Confederation consisted of 6 different alien species that had been expanding through the galaxy for thousands of years. They had never encountered serious resistance from any species they attacked, and clearly expected humans to surrender. Immediately after seeing the fate of the colonies, Morrison volunteered to lead the first response fleet, but Peterson had different plans. The Admiral activated security protocols that cleared the room of all but the highest-ranking officers. What he revealed next changed everything that Morrison thought he knew about Earth's military capabilities. For decades, the planet had been developing secret weapons programs under code names like Prometheus Protocol and Ragnarok Initiative. The weapons were unlike anything that existed in known galactic technology. Quantum displacement bombs that could erase matter from existence, leaving expanding voids in space and time. Neural disruption fields that could shut down alien nervous systems across entire star systems. Most terrifying of all was the stellar ignition array, which could trigger controlled nova events in targeted stars. Peterson explained that Earth had learned from every conflict in human history. The planet had never known true peace, and that constant warfare had driven technological development far beyond what other species achieved. While the Zephyrians had grown comfortable with easy conquests against primitive civilizations, humanity had been preparing for wars that might require the destruction of entire solar systems. General Walsh revealed another secret that shocked even Morrison. The human colonies that had been attacked were not just civilian settlements, but military installations disguised as peaceful farming communities. Every colonist had received combat training, and the settlements were designed as fortresses that could resist invasion for months. The Zephyrians had committed massive resources to destroying what they thought were helpless civilians. Fleet Admiral Johnson showed Morrison the real scope of Earth's hidden military power. The Sol system contained over 50 heavily armed space stations disguised as mining facilities or research outposts. The asteroid belt was filled with automated weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Earth's moon had been hollowed out and converted into a massive military base with enough firepower to sterilize planets. Intelligence. Director Garcia had been monitoring Zephyrian communications since the attacks began. The alien confederation was celebrating what they thought was an easy victory over primitive humans. Their military leaders were already planning the next phase of their expansion into human space. They expected Earth to surrender within weeks and were preparing occupation. Forces to take control of the remaining human colonies, the Zephyrians had made a critical error in their calculations. They had studied human history and seen the wars and conflicts that had shaped the species, but they had misunderstood what those conflicts meant. Where they saw primitive violence, they should have seen the evolution of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Where they saw chaos, they should have seen the endless refinement of military tactics and technology. Admiral Peterson addressed the assembled commanders with the doctrine that would guide humanity's response. The Zephyrians had chosen to make war on human children and civilians. They had violated every law of civilized warfare and had declared their intention to commit genocide against the entire human species. Earth's response would be total warfare against an enemy that had chosen extinction for human families. Morrison felt something change in the room as Peterson spoke. The other commanders were not just angry about the attacks, but were experiencing something deeper and more dangerous. They were feeling the collective rage of a species that had climbed to the top of their world's food chain through intelligence, technology, an absolute refusal to surrender even when facing extinction. The meeting ended with Peterson's final declaration. The Zephyrians wanted to teach humanity about limits and boundaries. Instead, they were about to learn about consequences. They had attacked the children of a species that had survived ice ages, plague, global wars, and every other catastrophe their homeworld could produce. Now they would discover why Earth had never truly known peace. As Morrison returned to his ship, he realized that everything was about to change. The Zephyrians thought they were fighting another primitive species that would collapse after the first serious attack. They had no idea that they had just declared war on the descendants of humanity's greatest warriors, scientists, and strategists. The stars themselves were about to learn why humans were called the species that made other species extinct. Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked through the heavily secured corridors of Research Station Omega, deep in the asteroid belt, where humanity's most dangerous secrets were hidden from the galaxy. The station looked like a simple mining facility from the outside, but inside, it contained laboratories that would have terrified every known alien civilization. She carried authorization codes from Admiral Peterson himself to begin the final phase of weapons testing that had been 30 years in development. That the first laboratory contained the quantum displacement bombs that violated several laws of physics that alien scientists considered absolute. The weapons did not simply destroy matter, but erased it completely from existence, leaving expanding voids in space and time. Elena had watched test footage of the bombs eliminating entire asteroids without leaving any debris or radiation. The target simply ceased to exist as if it had never been created. Commander Alex Turner arrived at the station with his newly formed Ghost Fleet, consisting of ships that were invisible to every known detection method in the galaxy. His flagship was the Vengeance, followed by the Wrath and the Fury, each carrying enough experimental weapons to destroy planets. The ships used technology that bent light and gravity around their hulls, making them completely undetectable, even when firing their weapons. Turner had been handpicked by Admiral Peterson to command the secret fleet because of his reputation for thinking beyond conventional military tactics. He had studied every alien species that humans had encountered and had identified fatal weaknesses in their military doctrines. The Zephyrians in particular had grown complacent after thousands of years of easy victories against primitive civilizations. Elena showed Turner the neural disruption field generators that could shut down alien nervous systems across vast distances. The technology had been developed by studying captured Zephyrian equipment and reverse engineering their biological weaknesses. A single field generator could disable every alien within a 10,000-mile radius while leaving humans completely unaffected. The most terrifying weapon was the stellar ignition array, which could trigger controlled collapse in targeted stars. Elena explained that the technology could make stars burn hotter and faster until they consumed their fuel in months instead of billions of years. The weapon could destroy entire solar systems while making the attacks look like natural stellar phenomena to anyone who investigated. Captain Ryan Davis commanded the research division that had discovered humanity's greatest advantage over alien civilizations. While other species had evolved on peaceful worlds with abundant resources, humans had developed on a planet that constantly tried to kill them. Every human carried genetic modifications that made them faster, stronger, and more aggressive than any known alien species. Davis revealed that the human colonies destroyed by the Zephyrians had not been helpless civilian settlements. Every colonist had received military training from childhood, and the settlements were designed as fortresses that could resist invasion for months. The colonies had underground bunker systems, hidden weapons caches, and automated defense networks. That should have made conquest impossible. The fact that the Zephyrians had succeeded in destroying the colonies meant they had committed enormous military resources to what they thought was a simple police action against primitive farmers. Intelligence estimates suggested they had used over half their total fleet strength to eliminate what they believed were 3 undefended civilian settlements. Major Sophie Collins had spent months infiltrating Zephyrian space using advanced stealth technology and genetic modifications that allowed her to pass as a member of their species. Her reports revealed that the Alien Confederation was celebrating what they considered the greatest military victory in their history. They had no idea that they had barely managed to destroy humanity's least important frontier settlements. Collins discovered that the Zephyrians had never encountered serious resistance from any species they attacked. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming primitive civilizations with superior technology, rather than fighting against enemies with comparable capabilities. They had no experience with the kind of total warfare that humans had perfected through centuries of global conflicts. The Alien Confederation consisted of 6 species that had formed an alliance based on mutual fear rather than cooperation. Each species controlled different aspects of their military, with no central command structure that could coordinate responses to unexpected threats. Their fleets were powerful, but inflexible, and their commanders had no experience adapting to changing battlefield conditions. Elena completed the final tests on all experimental weapon systems and declared them ready for deployment. The quantum bombs had been loaded onto Turner's Ghost Fleet, along with neural disruption generators and portable stellar ignition devices. The weapons were so advanced that they seemed like magic, even to the humans who had created them. Admiral Peterson arrived at the station to personally oversee the launch of the Ghost Fleet. He brought with him authorization from Earth's civilian government to use any level of force necessary to protect human space. The politicians had seen the footage from the destroyed colonies and had given the military complete freedom to respond as they saw fit. Peterson addressed Turner and his fleet commanders with the mission parameters that would guide their operations. They were not seeking to defeat the Zephyrians in conventional warfare, but to demonstrate that attacking humanity carried consequences that no alien civilization could survive. The Ghost Fleet would strike at targets throughout Zephyrian space using weapons that would convince them to withdraw from all human territory. The first target was the Zephyrian listening post at Kepler 442, which monitored all human communications in the outer colonies. The facility was heavily defended, and the aliens considered it impregnable, but Turner's ships could phase through their shields using quantum displacement technology. The entire station would simply vanish without leaving any evidence of how it had been destroyed. Turner studied the tactical data while his crews made final preparations for departure. The Zephyrians had built their military around the assumption that they would always face inferior opponents who could be crushed through superior firepower. They had never developed strategies for fighting enemies who could appear anywhere without warning and who possessed weapons that could erase matter from existence. Dr. Chris Anderson worked with Elena to calibrate the neural disruption fields for maximum psychological impact on enemy forces. The technology would not kill alien crews, but would leave them conscious and aware while completely paralyzed. They would be unable to move, speak, or even blink while their ships drifted helplessly through space, waiting for rescue that might never come. As the Ghost Fleet prepared to depart the station, Elena realized that humanity was about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. The weapons they had created were so powerful that using them would announce to the entire galaxy that humans were the most dangerous species that had ever reached the stars. There would be no hiding their capabilities after the first attacks began. Peterson gave the final launch authorization, and Turner's fleet vanished from all sensors as they engaged their cloaking systems. The ships would travel to Zephyrian space, using jump routes that no alien civilization knew existed. Within days, the enemy would discover that attacking humanity had been the greatest mistake in their species' history. The Zephyrians thought they were fighting primitive animals who would surrender after losing a few colonies. Instead, they had declared war on a species that had spent its entire evolution learning how to kill anything that threatened their survival. Now they would learn why humans were called the apex predators of the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Kate Johnson commanded the human counteroffensive from her flagship, Eternal Vigilance, while monitoring dozens of simultaneous operations across Zephyrian space. The alien confederation had expected humanity to either surrender immediately or launch desperate suicide attacks against their border fortifications. Instead, they were facing surgical strikes that eliminated their most important installations without leaving any trace of how the attacks had been carried out. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Walsh led the first wave of attacks aboard the stealth destroyer Shadow Strike, which approached the Zephyrian listening post at Kepler 442, completely undetected by their sensors. The facility was protected by energy shields that could stop conventional weapons and was defended by a fleet of 50 warships. The aliens considered the installation absolutely secure and had never imagined that enemies could simply phase through their defenses. Walsh activated the quantum displacement system and watched his ship pass through the station's shields like they were made of air. The Zephyrian defenders had no warning before the Shadow Strike appeared inside their protected space and released a quantum displacement bomb directly into the facility's core. The entire station, containing 3,000 alien personnel, simply vanished from existence, leaving only empty space where it had been moments before. The defending fleet found themselves protecting nothing while their sensors showed impossible readings that suggested the station had never existed at all. The psychological impact was immediate as Zephyrian commanders tried to understand how a heavily fortified installation could simply disappear without any sign of attack. Their communications networks filled with panicked reports about human ghosts that could walk through walls and erase matter from reality. Captain Nicole Foster commanded the Psychological Warfare Division aboard the cruiser Mindbreaker, which broadcast carefully crafted propaganda across Zephyrian communication networks. The footage showed human soldiers committing horrific atrocities against alien prisoners, but the scenes were actually sophisticated illusions designed to make the enemy believe that humans were capable of unimaginable brutality. The propaganda campaign worked beyond Foster's expectations as several Zephyrian colonies surrendered before human forces even arrived in their systems. The aliens had studied human history and knew about the wars and genocides that had shaped the species, but the fake footage convinced them that humanity had become something far worse than their historical records, suggested Major Sam Mitchell. Led a rescue mission to liberate the few human survivors from the attacked colonies using ships equipped with advanced medical facilities and trauma specialists. What he discovered on the devastated worlds changed the entire nature of humanity's response to the Zephyrian attacks. The aliens had not simply killed civilians, but had conducted horrific medical experiments on human prisoners. The survivors told stories of Zephyrian scientists who had vivisected living humans while studying their biological responses to pain and fear. The aliens had been trying to understand what made humanity so aggressive and had tortured thousands of prisoners in their research. The discovery eliminated any remaining moral constraints that Earth's military leaders had placed on their response to the attacks. Mitchell transmitted his findings to Admiral Peterson, who immediately authorized the use of humanity's most extreme weapons against all Zephyrian targets. The order went out to every human commander in the field that the enemy had forfeited any right to mercy or consideration under the laws of civilized warfare. The Zephyrians would learn that there were fates worse than death for species who tortured human children. Dr. Chris Anderson successfully tested the neural disruption field on a Zephyrian patrol fleet that was investigating the disappearance of their listening post. The technology left the alien crews conscious, but completely paralyzed while their ships drifted helplessly through space. The affected aliens could see and hear everything around them, but could not move or communicate while their vessels slowly ran out of life support. The patrol fleet sent automated distress signals that were received by other Zephyrian forces, but rescue ships found only empty vessels filled with living statues of terrified aliens. The crews were still alive, but were trapped inside their own bodies, unable to move or speak, while their minds remained fully aware. The psychological impact on enemy morale was devastating as word spread that humans possessed weapons that could trap souls inside paralyzed bodies. Commander Jake Morrison led a task force to the Zephyrian fortress world of Kepler 438b, which served as a major military command center for their expansion into human space. The planet was defended by over 200 warships and had orbital defense platforms that could destroy entire fleets. The Zephyrians considered the world absolutely impregnable and had never imagined that enemies could threaten their core territories. Morrison's task force included ships equipped with stellar manipulation, technology that could alter the gravitational fields around stars and planets. Instead of attacking the defending fleet directly, the humans used their weapons to relocate the entire planet to a decaying orbit around a dying star. The world's 2 billion inhabitants suddenly found themselves with exactly 1 year before. Their planet would be consumed by solar radiation. The relocation of an entire planet sent shockwaves through Zephyrian space as their scientists struggled to understand how humans had moved a world across interstellar distances. Their military commanders realized that they were facing enemies who possessed technology that seemed like magic even to advanced alien civilizations. If humans could move planets, They could presumably destroy or relocate any target in the galaxy. Morrison broadcast humanity's ultimatum across all Zephyrian communication networks while the displaced planet began its death spiral toward the dying star. The message was simple and direct. All Zephyrian forces would withdraw from human space immediately, or they would watch their worlds die one by one. Earth possessed weapons that could destroy stars, move planets, and trap souls in living bodies. Admiral Johnson coordinated simultaneous attacks on 12 different Zephyrian military installations, using quantum displacement bombs that erased the targets from existence. The aliens found themselves losing critical infrastructure without understanding how the attacks were being carried out. Their fleets could not protect targets that could be destroyed by invisible enemies who struck without warning. The Zephyrian military command tried to organize a coordinated response, but found their communication networks compromised by human infiltrators who had been operating in their space for months. Orders were intercepted, modified, or simply never delivered, while false intelligence led their fleets into traps where they faced weapons that violated every law of physics they understood. Fleet Admiral Kate Johnson realized that the Zephyrian Confederation was beginning to collapse under the psychological pressure of facing an enemy they could not understand or fight effectively. The aliens had built their empire on the assumption that superior technology would always guarantee victory, but humans possessed weapons that made their most advanced systems look like primitive tools. Captain Lisa Bradley commanded the occupation. Forces that took control of abandoned Zephyrian installations as the aliens withdrew from contested systems. The retreating enemy forces left behind valuable intelligence about their military capabilities and strategic plans. The humans discovered that the Confederation had been planning to expand their attacks into the Sol system itself within months. As Morrison's task force watched the fortress world begin its final descent toward the dying star, he realized that humanity had crossed a threshold that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Zephyrians had wanted to teach humans about limits and boundaries, but instead had learned that some species would burn entire star systems rather than accept conquest. The Zephyrian Confederation began fragmenting within weeks of humanity's relentless assault as the 6-member species abandoned their alliance to pursue separate peace negotiations with Earth. Admiral Peterson received dozens of surrender offers from individual alien governments who were desperate to avoid the fate of their fortress world that was now burning in the atmosphere of a dying star. Each species tried to blame their former allies for the attacks on human colonies, while claiming they had opposed the military action from the beginning. The Kalari claimed the war had been started by the Thuban without their knowledge. The Thuban insisted the Rigel had been the primary instigators. The Rigel blamed everything on the Sirius delegation, while the remaining species pointed fingers at each other in increasingly desperate attempts to avoid human retaliation. Peterson rejected all surrender offers and peace negotiations with a simple message that was broadcast across every Zephyrian communication network. The Confederation had chosen to make war on human children and civilians. They had committed genocide against peaceful settlements and had conducted medical experiments on human prisoners. Earth would accept nothing less than the complete dissolution of their alliance and the unconditional surrender of all 6 species. Captain Maria Santos commanded the specialized vessel Prometheus, which carried the stellar ignition array toward the Altair system, where the primary Zephyrian military command was located. Her ship looked like a simple transport vessel, but contained technology that could trigger controlled stellar collapse in targeted stars. The weapon was humanity's ultimate demonstration of power that would show the galaxy what happened to species who threatened Earth's children. Santos activated the stellar manipulation system as the Prometheus approached Altair without being detected by Zephyrian sensors. The technology did not make the star explode immediately, but instead began accelerating its natural fusion processes so that it would consume its fuel in years instead of billions of years. The star would die slowly, giving the inhabitants of the system time to evacuate while demonstrating humanity's ultimate capability. The effect was visible across Zephyrian space as Altair began burning brighter and hotter while emitting radiation that would sterilize every planet in the system within months. Alien scientists realized they were witnessing an impossible phenomenon, as humans had somehow weaponized stellar physics to turn an entire star into a weapon of mass destruction. General Amy Walsh led the Marine Corps' invasion of Zephyrian Prime, using matter displacement technology that allowed human forces to appear directly inside the capital city without warning. The defending aliens found themselves fighting enemies who could walk through walls and who possessed personal weapons that could erase matter from existence. The battle for the Confederation's capital world was brief and one-sided as alien military. Technology proved useless against humans, who fought like they were still hunting predators with primitive weapons. Walsh's Marines moved through the city, systematically eliminating resistance while their displacement. Technology made them effectively invulnerable to conventional weapons. Zephyrian ground forces had been designed for suppressing primitive civilizations and were completely unprepared for fighting an enemy that combined advanced technology with the tactical instincts of natural predators. Their weapons and armor had been developed for controlling civilian populations rather than engaging military forces that had evolved from Earth's most dangerous species. Dr. Elena Rodriguez made a disturbing discovery while analyzing captured Zephyrian historical records and technological databases. The alien confederation had been systematically exterminating emerging species for over 50,000 years. Humanity was not their first target, but simply the first species to survive the initial assault and fight back effectively. The galaxy was littered with the remains of civilizations that had been destroyed by the Zephyrians before they could develop interstellar travel. Thousands of species had been eliminated while they were still confined to their homeworlds and had no way to defend themselves against orbital bombardment. The Confederation had been committing genocide on a galactic scale for millennia. Intelligence. Director Paul Garcia uncovered the Confederation's deepest secret while interrogating captured alien commanders. The Zephyrians were not conquerors, but refugees who had fled from something in the galactic core thousands of years ago. They had been running from an enemy so terrifying that they spent centuries eliminating any species that might grow strong enough to attract its attention. The Confederation had attacked humanity not out of malice, but out of terror. A human expansion would bring the attention of their ancient enemy to this section of the galaxy. They had destroyed dozens of emerging civilizations to prevent them from developing technology that might be detected by whatever force had driven them from their original homeworlds. Garcia presented his findings to Admiral Peterson, who realized that humanity's victory over the Zephyrians might have attracted the attention of something far more dangerous than the Confederation. The ancient enemy that had driven 6 species to become genocidal refugees was still somewhere in the galactic core and might already be aware of the stellar manipulations that had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy. Colonel Brandon Lee commanded the occupation forces on 12 Zephyrian homeworlds where human Marines maintained order while alien governments collapsed under the weight of their military defeat. The surviving alien leaders were desperate to avoid total extinction and begged their human occupiers for mercy that they had never shown to their own victims. Lee delivered humanity's final judgment to the surrendering alien governments with the same directness that had characterized every human military action. Their fear of an ancient enemy did not justify genocide against emerging civilizations. Their past as refugees did not excuse their crimes against peaceful species. They had chosen to make war on children, and now they would face the consequences. Complete collapse of organized Zephyrian resistance occurred when their surviving military commanders realized that continued fighting would only result in the complete extinction of their species. Human weapons could destroy stars, move planets, and erase matter from existence, while their own technology was useless against enemies who could appear anywhere without warning. Commander Alex Turner coordinated the final phase of military operations. As Zephyrian fleets throughout the galaxy either surrendered or were systematically eliminated by his ghost fleet, the aliens had lost the will to fight after seeing their fortress world burn and their capital star begin dying. They realized they were facing an enemy that would destroy entire solar systems rather than accept defeat. The last organized Zephyrian military force surrendered when Admiral Peterson demonstrated humanity's ultimate weapon by relocating their homeworld to an unstable orbit around a neutron star. The planet would be torn apart by gravitational forces within days unless the aliens provided complete intelligence about their ancient enemy and revealed the location of every species they had enslaved or terrorized. Captain Lisa Bradley received the surrender documents from all 6 species that had formed the Confederation, while their leaders begged for mercy and promised to reveal everything they knew about the galactic core. The aliens admitted they had been wrong to attack humanity, but claimed they had been driven by desperation to prevent their ancient enemy from discovering this section of the galaxy. The war ended with the complete dissolution of the Zephyrian Confederation and the unconditional surrender of all 6 member species. Their surviving leaders revealed the location of their ancient enemy and provided detailed intelligence about the force that had driven them to become genocidal refugees. They warned humanity that something far more dangerous than their confederation was stirring in the galactic core. As Peterson reviewed the intelligence provided by the surrendering aliens, he realized that humanity's demonstration of stellar manipulation technology had likely attracted the attention of whatever ancient force the Zephyrians had been hiding from. Earth had won a decisive victory, but might have announced their presence to an enemy that made the Confederation look like harmless children. 6 months after the complete surrender of the Zephyrian Confederation, humanity had become the dominant military power in the local galactic region, but victory had brought unexpected responsibilities. Admiral Jake Morrison found himself promoted to Supreme Commander of Terran Forces, overseeing the liberation of thousands of species that the aliens had enslaved or terrorized for millennia. The new Terran Protectorate was established on principles that were completely different from the Zephyrian system of conquest and oppression. Any species that wanted to develop peaceful interstellar civilization would receive Earth's protection and technological assistance. Any species that chose conquest and genocide would face the same fate as the Confederation that had learned too late about human determination. Captain Lisa Bradley commanded the humanitarian fleet, which consisted of converted warships that had been modified to carry medical supplies, construction equipment, and agricultural technology to worlds that the Zephyrians had devastated. The same humans who had perfected stellar annihilation were now teaching former enemies how to restore dead planets to life and rebuild their shattered civilizations. The irony was not lost on Bradley as she watched human engineers working alongside alien scientists to develop terraforming technology that could reverse the effects of orbital bombardment. Species that had considered humanity primitive and violent were learning that humans could create life as easily as they could destroy it. When the situation required different approaches, Dr. Elena Rodriguez led the Galactic Development Initiative, which shared human technology with allied species while carefully monitoring for potential threats to Earth security. Her greatest challenge was not technical but philosophical, as many alien civilizations could not understand humanity's approach to interstellar relations. Most species found it impossible to comprehend how humans could switch between absolute brutality against enemies and absolute loyalty to allies, depending on the circumstances. They had never encountered a species that could commit genocide against aggressors while simultaneously providing humanitarian aid to their victims within the same star system. The former Zephyrian territories were divided into administrative zones overseen by human military governors who worked with local populations to establish democratic governments. Species that had lived under alien oppression for thousands of years were learning about concepts like individual freedom and representative government that humans considered fundamental rights. Major Sophie Collins coordinated intelligence operations throughout the former Confederation territories, while monitoring communications from the Galactic core, where the ancient enemy was reportedly located. Long-range sensors had detected massive artificial structures moving through deep space toward the outer rim, where humanity's stellar manipulations had announced their presence to the galaxy. The structures were unlike anything in human databases, and appeared to be constructed from materials that should not exist according to known physics. They moved faster than light without using any detectable propulsion systems, and their energy signature suggested they possessed technology that made human weapons look primitive by comparison. Admiral Peterson received reports from deep space, monitoring stations that confirmed the approach of multiple alien megastructures from the galactic core. The objects were enormous beyond comprehension, with the smallest being larger than Earth's moon, while the largest appeared to be artificial planets, equipped with weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. The ancient enemy that the Zephyrians had fled from was finally making its appearance in human space after detecting the stellar manipulations that had ended the Confederation. Intelligence analysis suggested these beings called themselves the Eternal Hierarchy and had been the dominant force in the galactic core for millions of years. Captain Ryan Davis led scientific analysis of the approaching alien megastructures, using every sensor technology that humanity possessed. His teams discovered that the hierarchy ships were not simply large, but were actually mobile civilizations containing billions of inhabitants, along with manufacturing facilities that could construct entire fleets during interstellar travel. The hierarchy had apparently been dormant for thousands of years and had only become active again after detecting humanity's use of stellar manipulation technology. Their long-range communications indicated they were intrigued by the discovery of a species that could weaponize stars and were approaching to investigate what they considered an interesting anomaly. Commander Alex Turner prepared Earth's defensive fleets for the arrival of an enemy that made the Zephyrian Confederation look like a minor threat. His Ghost fleet had been expanded to include over 500 vessels equipped with quantum displacement, bombs and stellar ignition arrays, but even these weapons might prove insufficient against technology that was millions of years more advanced. Turner coordinated with military commanders throughout human space to establish defensive positions around critical systems, while evacuation plans were prepared for civilian populations. The approaching hierarchy represented a threat that could potentially eliminate humanity completely, but Earth's military was determined to make any conquest as costly as possible. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked with captured Zephyrian scientists to understand everything possible about the hierarchy before their arrival in human space. The ancient aliens reportedly possessed technology that could manipulate matter and energy at the subatomic level, while their weapons could alter the fundamental forces that held reality together. The first contact occurred when hierarchy scouts arrived at the edge of human space and encountered Admiral Peterson's welcome committee consisting of 1,000 human warships equipped with the most advanced weapons Earth could produce. The alien vessels were massive beyond belief and seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. The hierarchy beings communicated through methods that bypassed traditional language and spoke directly to human minds using concepts that were difficult to understand. They expressed curiosity about humanity's development of stellar manipulation technology and announced their intention to study human civilization before deciding whether it represented a threat to galactic stability. Commander Alex Turner represented Earth's diplomatic response when the hierarchy demanded humanity's immediate submission to their superior civilization. The ancient aliens were accustomed to effortless conquest of primitive species and expected humans to surrender immediately upon seeing demonstrations of their overwhelming technological superiority. Turner delivered humanity's response with the same directness that had characterized every human military action since the Zephyrian attacks. Earth had spent the previous year cleaning up the mess that the hierarchy's refugees had made throughout the galaxy. The ancient aliens had two choices: turn around and leave human space, or discover why humans were called the species that made stars. Burned out, the hierarchy's reaction revealed they had not encountered serious resistance in millions of years, and were more intrigued than threatened by humanity's defiant response. They announced their intention to withdraw temporarily to observe human behavior and develop strategies for dealing with a species that treated stellar annihilation as conventional warfare. Admiral Peterson addressed the assembled human fleet commanders after the hierarchy's withdrawal and declared the Terran doctrine that would guide humanity's expansion throughout the galaxy. Earth would defend any species that wanted freedom, would destroy any species that chose conquest, and would teach both friends and enemies why the galaxy's most dangerous predators had evolved on a small world that had never known peace. The story concluded with humanity's declaration that they were ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy could produce. They had survived ice ages, plagues, global wars, and alien invasion while developing technology that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. The hierarchy thought they were dealing with another primitive species, but were about to learn what happened when ancient powers encountered the descendants of Earth's apex predators. The final confrontation was approaching as humanity prepared to face an enemy that possessed millions of years of technological advancement. The stars would soon learn whether human determination and ingenuity could overcome overwhelming odds, or whether Earth's brief moment of galactic dominance was about to end against forces that had ruled the galaxy since before humanity's ancestors had learned to use fire. The hierarchy had made the same mistake as every other species that had underestimated humanity throughout galactic history. They saw Earth's brief existence and assumed they were dealing with primitive animals who could be easily controlled or eliminated. They had no understanding of what it meant to evolve on a world where survival required constant adaptation and where only the most ruthless predators reached the top of the food chain. Human scientists were already analyzing the energy signatures from the hierarchy megastructures and developing countermeasures for their advanced technology. Earth's military commanders were planning strategies that would force the ancient aliens to fight on humanity's terms rather than relying on their technological superiority alone.